All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Have you ever wondered why incredibly expensive estimating software just gets abandoned? Today, we're unpacking the quiet rebellion happening inside pre-construction teams. And more importantly, we're going to break down the 3 definitive steps you need to actually drive tech adoption and break that spreadsheet bottleneck once and for all. Picture this. You've just dropped 5 figures on a brand new, state-of-the-art estimating platform. You roll it out, you do all the mandatory training, and then? Well, a staggering 42% of construction firms report that 2 full years after implementing new software, their estimators are still running at least 40% of their bids straight through Microsoft Excel. That is a massive failure rate, and we really need to understand exactly why it's happening. Software vendors love to look at that 42% and just blame the users, right? They call it a training deficit and prescribe even more onboarding sessions. But actually, scratch that. We have to recognize this brilliant truth from the source material. Estimators who revert to spreadsheets aren't stubborn Luddites terrified of the future. They are highly rational actors. Their primary job is to be the tactical defenders of your profit margins. So when they reject a tool, they're actually communicating something vital about your process. So here is how we're going to structure things today. First, the quiet spreadsheet rebellion. Next, the real cost of Excel. Then we get into our solutions. Step 1, mapping the workflow. Step 2, piloting with metrics. And finally, Step 3, choosing between custom and SaaS. Starting off with Section 1, the quiet spreadsheet rebellion. So generic package platforms are usually built by developers who assume bidding is a perfectly linear, orderly progression. You do your takeoff, you price it, add the markup, and submit. Boom, done. But if you've ever actually survived a bid day, you know real-world bidding is utter chaos. It is a completely nonlinear scramble. You've got subcontractor quotes flying in 10 minutes before the deadline, random contradictions in the specs, and frantic last-minute adjustments. Generic tools frequently lock up under that pressure or force you through 5 nested menus just to change a single number. Spreadsheets, on the other hand, just bend effortlessly to accommodate the chaos. Which brings us to Section 2, the real cost of Excel. Because while we definitely understand why estimators love Excel, looking at the ServiceTitan 2026 report is honestly a bit alarming. 80% of contractors are operating on fragmented, disconnected tech. That means 8 out of 10 are creating massive data silos where critical information just lives on someone's random desktop, totally severing the feedback loop between the pre-construction estimate and the actual field costs. And keeping your data trapped in these fragmented spreadsheets actively undermines your firm. First off, manual data entry literally caps your bid capacity. You're leaving revenue on the table simply because you can't process enough bids. Then there's the terrifying key person risk. What happens if the one senior estimator who understands that massive, undocumented 20-tab workbook decides to retire tomorrow? Your firm's institutional capability could vanish overnight. Add in the financial risk of a silent, broken macro hidden in row 400, or the wasted hours of manual rekeying, and the true cost of Excel becomes pretty staggering. And this inefficiency is incredibly dangerous right now. Get this, the Associated Builders and Contractors report that the industry needs 349,000 net new workers in 2026 just to keep up with baseline demand. Labor is scarce, wages are climbing. You literally cannot afford to have your highly paid estimators wasting their time fighting rigid software or untangling broken spreadsheet links. Okay, so how do we fix it? Let's move to Section 3, and the first of our 3 steps. Step 1, map the workflow. Listen, this step happens before you even pick up the phone to call a software vendor. You have to execute a rigorous UX-led discovery phase that maps the actual sequence of your bid. You need to follow your team from the exact second that PDF plan set opens all the way to that crazy final hour of formatting the proposal. Buying software based on a generic feature checklist is a guaranteed failure. You've got to identify exactly which steps are burning the most time and where your actual friction points are. Moving right along to Section 4, Step 2, pilot with metrics. You absolutely have to get past those polished, perfectly controlled sales demos. We're talking about negotiating a 60-day live operational pilot tied to 4 strict metrics. First, a platform utilization rate over 85%. Because if they're running bids in the software but secretly double-checking the math in Excel, the tool is robust. You also need to see less than a 2% variance in takeoff accuracy, a 30% cut in proposal turnaround time, and 100% automated data handoffs, literally 0 manual rekeying. You have to define success before you sign the contract. Oh, and here's the ultimate acid test during that pilot. You've got to run the platform's pricing database against the actual scope and final field costs of at least 3 of your firm's recently completed projects. If the generic pricing is wildly off from your real-world historical costs, it's not an automation tool anymore. It's just a wildly expensive calculator that requires constant manual overrides, which guarantees your team will go right back to Excel. Which leads us to Section 5, our final step, custom versus SaaS. So here is the real tipping point. If your estimating logic is standard, generic commercial SaaS works perfectly fine. But, and this is absolutely crucial, if your proprietary formulas, your localized risk assessments, and your highly specific crew productivity tweaks are exactly how you win your bids, forcing that unique logic into a generic vendor's box actively destroys your competitive edge. You're flattening the very thing that makes you special. How do you know when it's time to build instead of buy? Well, if your team is spending more time inventing administrative workarounds than actually estimating, you've hit the SaaS ceiling. Or if you have complex data integrations, like needing a real-time bridge to a legacy ERP system or highly guarded proprietary IP like predictive modeling, a custom or hybrid build isn't just nice to have, it's a strategic necessity. You need software that adapts to your team, not the other way around. Now, I know a lot of execs balk at custom software because of that upfront capital expenditure in year 1. But watch how this compounds over time. By year 2, you're eliminating inefficiencies at an incredible scale. And by year 3, your custom build has actually reached cost parity with what you'll be spending on mid-tier SaaS subscriptions anyway. The massive difference is that in year 3, you now own a proprietary, scalable asset that no vendor can ever retire or reprice on you. As we wrap up this explainer, here is what it all boils down to. When your most experienced estimators flat out refuse to drop their spreadsheets, they are communicating a fundamental truth about the high-stakes reality of how your firm operates. The fix for a 42% abandonment rate is absolutely not more remedial training on a broken, rigid tool. You have to listen to the friction. By executing these 3 steps, mapping the real workflow, demanding rigid pilot metrics, and knowing exactly when custom tooling is required to protect your edge, you can finally break that spreadsheet bottleneck. So I'll leave you with this final critical thought to bring back to your leadership team. Are you forcing your team to fit the software, or are you building software that actually fits your team? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.